Racist Karen calls the cops on my cousin, so I get her business closed down. My cousin recently opened her own salon. From a young age, she taught herself how to thread/wax eyebrows and developed an interest in makeup and hair. Everyone in our extended family would go to her before events and on a monthly basis for their threading, waxing, hair, and makeup needs. In 2020, she had a full-time job, non-salon related, but decided to renovate the basement of her home to create a small salon space. She now spends her free time taking clients in her at-home salon, and there's nothing but great reviews. Her sister helped her with the renovations, and now helps her with marketing the business, and I help with the finances. We all support her and are really proud of her. The salon is our baby. We're now in the middle of a pandemic, and this greatly affected her salon business. As a result, she implemented safety measures, and our small team made sure to keep up with COVID regulations in our city. This included having one customer inside at a time, doing temperature checks, making masks/face shields and gloves mandatory, wiping down the salon after each client, etc. Also, when our city was in lockdown, the salon was closed as it is not an essential service. Our city is once again in lockdown since the end of December to the end of January. The salon has been closed since the lockdown began. The salon's social media pages had been updated to let the current clientele know that the salon is closed. Now comes the Karen. Karen sees a community post from October detailing a discount that the salon was having on a certain package we offer. She comments on the post saying that she can't believe the salon is open in the middle of a lockdown when her salon has to be closed. This is important for later. Karen fails to notice that this post was made in October, when salons were allowed to operate as long as they followed safety regulations. Karen doesn't bother checking more recent posts indicating that the salon was closed. My cousin doesn't see her reply at this time. The next day, 2 police officers show up at my cousin's door while she's at a doctor's appointment. The officers ask for my cousin, and my aunt lets them know that she's not home right now. My aunt does not speak English very well, and lets the officers know that she would call my cousin and ask her to come home. Maybe the officers didn't believe her, but they insisted on coming inside the home. My aunt had already called my cousin as she was worried. My cousin asked what it was about, but my aunt didn't know. My cousin then asked if they had a warrant for anything. When she found out they didn't, she told her mom not to let them come inside and that she would be there in about 20 minutes. My cousin began driving home when my aunt called her to let her know that they simply left. Hearing this, my cousin was less worried and decided to go grocery shopping as planned before heading home. Turns out, the officers came back half an hour later and once again demanded to see my cousin. My aunt called my cousin again and asked her to come home, but in the 20 minutes she took to come home, the officers were gone. They had left a card and asked her to call back. My cousin managed to get a hold of the officers and was told that someone had reported her business. They claimed that she was operating during the lockdown, and they had proof. My cousin knew this wasn't true, as the salon had been closed for quite a while. By now, my cousin had seen the comment from earlier and mentioned that she knew exactly what their so-called proof was, but the post in question was from October. My cousin was very upset, as this post was not even close to being actual evidence of her operating now in January. She was also very upset that they insisted on coming inside the house with no cause or warrant when they could clearly see that my aunt does not understand the language very well. At the end of the conversation, the police officer apologized to my cousin, and we thought it was the end of it. You must be wondering how we know that Karen was the one who called the cops. Well, she told us. The next day, my cousin received a message she realized was from the woman who commented on the post. Karen decided to pretend she's a customer and asked my cousin if she can book an appointment, to which she replied very friendly, explaining how they are closed due to regulation. Karen claimed that her girlfriend was at the salon yesterday, which blagged my cousin, and she simply told Karen that she must have got the date wrong, as we haven't been open for months. This is when Karen reveals she was part of the police calling, as she responds, "No problem, but I didn't get the date wrong. I also know the police came due to you being open. Take care." At this point, my cousin has lost all patience and snaps back, telling Karen she isn't going to sit and entertain her boring life, and maybe instead of making lies, she should get a job of her own. We thought this would be the end of the conversation, but an hour or so later, Karen responded saying, "I own my own spa that's closed, as should yours be. My mom is the only one who called the cops. You are not entertaining me at all. Go back to your own country instead of messing with ours." The good old go back to your own country card. My cousin decided to block her at this point, and just happy this was all over. Her sister and I were still outraged at the racist comment, and how someone could make up lies about a small business that led to the cops terrifying my aunt. When my cousin told me about Karen, the fact that she had her own spa really stood out, so I did some digging. Turns out, Karen runs her own spa out of her house. Doing some more snooping, I found reviews from her clients on her business page that were posted on days that the city was under lockdown. The reviews could be from clients who received services before the lockdown and only now had a chance to write a review. To be sure, I found Karen's Instagram page. I decided to use her own trick against her. I created a new account with a generic name and followed her page so she couldn't see that I was related to my cousin. I then messaged her to ask about the prices for her services. She responded pretty much instantly, asking me what I was after, and I pretended I was wanting a glow facial. Karen told me this was her best seller, and she had an offer of buy one and get one session for free. I tried to suck up to her, telling her this is a great deal compared to other salons, and asked when she's next available for booking. Here is where Karen messed up. She tells me that she can't have people come to her in lockdown, but she can travel to me for the treatment. Karen was not operating from her home location due to lockdown restrictions, but was traveling to her clients' homes, which is still against regulations. I then made up a lie about my home not having adequate space and asked for her address so we can meet up at my friend's place somewhere between her and I's location. She foolishly told me her address. During this time, I also tried joining other community groups that she was a part of. In one particular group, people in the community were promoting their small businesses. She had recently made a post about discounts on her services for the month of January. I immediately went online and submitted a report about her business still operating, including screenshots, her address, full name, etc. A few days passed by, and I had forgotten to check up on it, as I was busy with life again. I saw the incident report number on a sticky note I had on my desk and decided to check in. Apparently, this was not Karen's first offense. Karen had already been fined $750 for having a client in her home during the first lockdown in my city. After being fined, she decided to change her business model and go to the client's home instead. Now she was fined $10,000. I was still following her on Instagram, so I decided to check it out. She had gone on a rant about how she was going to do very bad things to the person who reported her. She also mentioned that she was no longer allowed to run her business. I'm not sure what type of ban the regional police put on her, but I immediately deleted the account and exited the groups I had joined earlier. At the end of the day, Karen got what she deserved, and I fulfilled my dream of pretending to be Sherlock Holmes. I really hate that racism will forever be a thing. I do not understand how an individual can look at another differently based on their skin color. Maybe the whole plot from Karen was racially motivated, and she was trying to get rid of her competition by having their business taken down, because otherwise, I don't see any reason why someone would make such fake allegations. I hope you are all right. Fortunately, it didn't take the police long to recognize this was a false claim, and it was over with quickly. Most people are happy to leave this here, which your cousin most certainly was. You, on the other hand, felt like you needed to get some revenge, and that I respect from you. It doesn't seem like you had to try too hard to find out that Karen was still operating her salon during lockdown. But whatever effort you put in was all worth it for the consequences that it brought to Karen. Revenge on a racist cop. I'm a 31-year-old male now, but this happened when we were about 18 to 19. We lived on a hill here in the UK, and it was just good etiquette that everyone on our street parked outside their own house on the lay-by outside. It wasn't something we all agreed, and every now and then we parked outside one another's houses on a temporary basis. But it was just an understanding everyone had that you don't park outside other people's homes, as there's limited space. I had lived at this house for more than 8+ years at this point, and it's probably relevant to highlight the fact that we were the only Asian family on the street at this time. Everywhere else you had white people who, for the most part, were pleasant, and we got along with without issue. Except one house, almost directly across the road, and the one left to our house. We just didn't click, really. This kid, who was my age, lived across the road from us. We will call him Jack. Jack's dad had left when he was young, and he had an older sister, and he lived with his mom. I had a strange relationship with him. We weren't friends, and he wasn't really the type of person I wanted to hang out with, as he was kind of like a feral kid. He rarely went to school, lived an impulsive life, just hanging about on the streets and messing around all the time. And coming from a strict Indian family, it just didn't fit in with my attitude. Plus, one time, I got into a bit of an altercation with him. Why, I can't remember, but it got physical, and already there was bad blood between us. It was probably, I imagine, because he said something, or made fun of me or my brother, and we reacted. We're not the type to instigate. It's not in us, but we will finish it. Anyways, he was always doing daft things, and one time when I was about 15, he was playing with my neighbor who lived to the left of us. Anyways, as they are running around, he jumps on my mom's car and stands on it, and the roof too. I see him through the window as I'm going upstairs, and I knock on the window and shout, "Get the hell off my car!" He panics and runs inside my neighbor's house, and I run out, pissed off at him for that with my older brother. He could have dented the car, and it was just pure disrespectful to do that. This is the kind of kid he was. Anyways, him and his mates come out of the house, and we have a bit of a verbal altercation. One of them swears the common racist term every white person shouts at a brown person here, "You bloody P word." I'm not Pakistani. Hell, Indians hate Pakistani people. Our people have bad history. And I get pissed off, but eventually we calm down as Jack apologizes for his mate and we go in. This kind of set a bad precedent for our relationship even further from this point on, really. Fast forward to when we're 18, 19 now. His mom is dating a police officer who ends up parking outside our house, and this isn't really an issue at this point, as sometimes needs must, etc. The problem is this became a reoccurring theme, and as we live on a hill, things get a bit more difficult. You see, everyone parks outside their own homes as there is limited space, and if our space is taken up by this police officer's car, then we can't park anywhere on the hill. We have to park at the bottom, and if we've done the shopping, carrying this up all the way home or walking all the way to our house from parking our car can get tedious really fast, especially when it's daily. It got to a point he was doing it so often, my brother thought he would ask him nicely to move. No malice or bad intent intended. He goes over to ask him if he wouldn't mind moving his car, as he had space outside his own house now. The police officer takes out his police badge and shows my brother and says he's a police officer and will park wherever he wants. My brother, bearing in mind he's only about 19 or 20 at this point, is like, whatever, fine. Just trying not to cause an issue. Now, purely because my brother asked him if he wouldn't mind moving his car, he made it a point to always park outside our house to aggravate us further, as they knew it was an issue for us. Every opportunity, even when he had space outside his own house. Every time. This went on for about 5 months, and my brother asked him nicely again 2 more times, as we were having to put up with this daily as he was visiting Jack's mom. This had gone on for months, and it gets old really fast, especially as you're looking outside your window and wondering why he's parking in front of your house when he has space to park outside his own. They had a driveway for Jack's mom's car, but they would move this car outside of the driveway and block off the lady space when Jack's mom's car so this cop can then park on our spot. Now maybe there's no racist intent, or maybe there is. I can only call it how I see it. The only Indian family on the street. We have some patchy history with his girlfriend's son, and he's acting like this. Who knows? But it felt like there was something beneath it. One day, my brother snapped after having put up with this for so long. He went over to him and asked him nicely again one more time if he wouldn't mind moving his car. He refused to move it. My brother responds saying, "Fine, if you want to leave it there, it's going to stay there indefinitely now." The cop watches as my brother gets in his car and moves it within like 0.1 millimeter away from his car's front. He then gets into my mom's car and moves this car 0.1 millimeter away from its back, effectively trapping it inside. He can't move it without effectively hitting our cars now. He says he's calling the police, and my brother tells him to call them then. Now, the police response times here are poor. We had a car crash outside our house, and no one came for like 45 minutes to look into it. We fully expect this guy to ring his friends on the police force to scare us, and this is exactly what he does. Less than 5 minutes later, we have a knock on the door, and 2 police officers ask us if they can come inside to speak to us. We were fully prepared for this. We say, "No, you can't. You can stand right here outside, and first things first, We want their badge numbers and the incident number for this call-out. They start to poop themselves a little and they become a little weak as we start to question them. Do you know this police officer? What's the incident number? What police precinct are you based at? Do you work at the same precinct as him? How did you get here so quickly in less than 5 minutes? They are aware that this is being recorded, by the way. This catches them off guard, and they start to get a little flustered. We lay into them saying we know this isn't an official call-out, and say we're more than happy to take a trip to the police station to address this whole fiasco with their supervising officer, so they can explain it all. But our cars are not moving anywhere, and his will remain trapped. The penny drops for them, and at this point, I imagine they realize they have bitten off more than they can chew. It's not going to be a quick little favor for their buddy as they realize we were fully prepared to go to the police station to address this. Their response? Let us go over to him and try to talk him about this. At this point, this dong-head cop is watching us talk to them, and the police cross over to him. As they do this, we go over to their police car and take pictures of this as well, as them talking to their friend as they watch us. There's no way they can deny not being here. The gravity of the situation starts to dawn on them, no doubt. Let me explain. They are on an unofficial call-out during their working hours, doing something highly questionable, which appears to be potentially racially motivated. The fact that we are the only Asian family on the street and being subjected to this antagonization isn't helping the issue, nor is the fact that he has chosen to park outside our house when the entire street is empty, which we photographed. Technically, he hasn't broken any law, but it's this kind of stuff that can seriously leave a nasty mark on careers, especially if we pushed for a formal investigation or went to the press about this victimization. It was a storm brewing that no cop wants to be a part of, and the fact that they are out on an unofficial call-out doesn't help, as there's no call log or reason for them to be there. They have no excuse for being there, unless it's completely off the books. Less than 3 minutes later, the two police officers and this dong-head cop come around and apologize, with him saying, "I'm sorry for parking on your street. It will never happen again." He never did either. Eventually, he broke up with Jack's mom, a month or so later too, oddly. Jack, however, wasn't too bad in his older years. They moved away after a couple of years. It must have been hard for you and your family being the only Asians in the neighborhood. Fortunately, it sounds like the majority of your neighbors have left the stupid racist mindset behind, bar a few. From what I gather, Jack's family weren't too much of a day-to-day issue until the officer boyfriend became involved and decided he was entitled to park in front of your house. What a jerk thing to do, especially considering he didn't even technically live there. Your brother is smart for attempting to nicely ask him to move it, and incredibly brave for the stunt he pulled when he trapped the car in. This story shows how important it is to know your laws and use them to your advantage. You guys did a great job of gathering evidence and analyzing the situation, noticing that it was an unofficial call-out that they can get in big trouble for. The jerk cop did right by instantly apologizing and finally moving his car. As if he didn't, you could have probably get him to lose his job along with the friends he called out. Entitled and racist mother and daughter harass an older woman at the supermarket. As you all are most likely aware, there is a global pandemic. Therefore, as I am fortunate enough to work from home, I only leave the house if I have to meet a high-profile client, or I need to pick up some items I am unable to find online. Yesterday, I went to my local supermarket, grabbed the items I needed, and headed to the till to pay. I was behind an older woman who was not white. I absolutely detest that I have to point that out, but you will understand why shortly. The lady in front of me began loading her items. I asked if she needed some help as she seemed to struggle. It was then I realized English was not a language she could speak well. Fortunately, I took a guess at what language she spoke and was correct. I used to specialize in immigration law, and throughout my time as an immigration lawyer, I did manage to learn different languages. This helped as I would not always need to hire an interpreter. We spoke a little, and she honestly seemed absolutely lovely. As I was helping her unload her shopping, a woman and her daughter line up behind me. Immediately, the woman begins to make huffing and puffing sounds as though everyone is an inconvenience. I ignored her and continued to help unload her items as the customer in front had nearly all of her items scanned. As I'm loading items onto the belt, the daughter of the lady behind me begins to pull at the scarf of the lady in front of me. She's tugging and begins to say, "Take it off." I look at her mom, hoping she will step in and stop this abhorrent behavior, but nothing. I can tell the lady is scared and trying her best to hold her scarf, but this child is tugging and making vile comments such as, "This is not allowed. You need to take it off." At this point, I've had enough, and it's evident her mother will not be stepping in. So I tell her to stop it, and that if she does not, I will get security to make sure she stops. I also tell her that her behavior is not nice, and would she like someone tugging at her clothing? She tells me to be quiet, and I then step in between her and the woman and sort of become a human shield over her to stop her. I did not want to touch the child. The lady grabs hold of my hand and is shaking. I feel so awful for her. I tell the cashier and she is belled for security. I relay this information to the lady in her language so that she can find some comfort in knowing security is coming. Enter the mother of the child, who finally decides that she does have a voice and can indeed speak up. She calls out the other lady for not speaking English and then asks me why I'm defending her and what language was I speaking to her. Then she asks why I, as a white woman, was speaking another language. I go ahead and tell her what her daughter was doing and that the behavior was not acceptable. I also told her that I found it shameful that she did not stop her daughter. She then tells me her daughter has autism. She is allowed to do this as it helps her stay calm. I refuse to accept that as justification. Her daughter must be 7 at least. It is entirely deplorable. That then starts her tirade of how wrong I am for defending someone like her and her people. How wrong I was for stopping her daughter, and that I probably hate being white. Fortunately, at this point, the security officers have arrived and can see and hear her making racist comments. One officer takes her trolley and asks both the mother and daughter to follow him. The daughter is kicking and screaming, and the mother is swearing for all to hear as they follow him. The second security officer then speaks to the cashier and then asks me what happened. I explain the situation, and he requests that I translate an apology on behalf of the store to the lady, and that they will issue her a voucher at the customer service desk. He also asks if she would like to take this matter further, in which case we will need to come with him and make statements. I relay this information to her and ask her what she would like to do. She declines, and says she is humiliated enough and would just like to go home. Whilst I had hoped we would take the issue further, I completely respect her choice and understand how demeaning it must have been for her. I offer to pay for her shopping, and she declines. I insist further, and the cashier allows it. She is incredibly grateful and had said some wonderfully kind things to me in appreciation. I did ask her if she would like me to drop her home, but she said no. She would take the bus. I refused and said if she was not comfortable in my car, then I will order and pay for a cab. Again, she was grateful and so wonderfully nice to me that I almost cried. I think at this point my emotions were all over the place, because hearing her say how humiliated she felt was heartbreaking. No one should ever be treated in such a manner. We did part ways, but I gave her my number and said if I could ever be of help, to let me know. I'm not sure what happened to the mother and her spawn, but I imagine the manager would have had some words and either banned her temporarily or indefinitely. There are security cameras everywhere, so the entire interaction would have been recorded, so she certainly could not decline anything. I've seen many people behave like arseholes, online and offline. But honestly, witnessing what I did yesterday and hearing what I heard come from the child, it was evidently all learned behavior. Truthfully, it is such a shame. That hate is what she's teaching her child. I feel so sorry for the poor woman who had to go through all of that. I can't even imagine how it must have felt, but I'm glad that you were there at the perfect time to be able to help out. The world needs more people like you, who are willing to speak up on others' behalf. I find it disgusting that she has taught this young girl such racist thoughts and hopes someone puts her mind back on the right path of all humans are equal. You're a great person, as many people will see things like this happen and not say anything just to avoid confrontation. You, on the other hand, did everything in your power to make this woman feel better after being shamed and disrespected. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.